Hey, it's Brian back for another edition of Italian in Medellin. Buenos dias. It is starting to be afternoon here in Laurales and near Parque Medellin, where the big Catholic Church has a processional for Easter Sunday. A lot of people gathered here. Hola, Mama Marta. Hola, Moja. Es mi mamá colombiana y mi nieta colombiana. Anyway, I wanted to go over the reasons I chose my apartment in Laurales instead of the other parts of the city. In Medellin, there are 4 recommended neighborhoods for gringos and foreigners to settle because they're about the best.
Que ella es argentina y colombiana.
So the first thing I did when I started studying where I wanted to live, in what part of Medellin, Colombia, I found out from Colombians who live here and from my realtor, from other gringos. Everybody has their own opinion, so I'm just going to give you my opinion. It could be wrong for you. As my realtor said, the best thing is to maybe wait till you get here before you buy something and just walk the neighborhood, live in the neighborhood, live in the other neighborhoods if you want. But I just prayed a lot and God directed me. So the main parts of the city, the most popular part of Medellin, the one you'll hear a lot of, big name sports figures, basketball players, probably a lot of people in Hollywood, a lot of gringos. And by the way, let me explain the word gringo. I used to think it meant anybody who wasn't Latino was a gringo, but not so. Gringos are only the people who live in the United States of America. Because when we were fighting the war with Mexico, our soldiers wore green hats, green outfits, and the Mexicans were like, green, go. Like people wearing green, go home. And so it morphed into gringos. So in Poblado, it's a very popular section for gringos. Most everybody goes there from the United States. And I studied on YouTube and talked to different people that live in the area or have lived here. And I found out that even though Poblado is very popular for partying, easy to get drugs, lots of party people there. They have the party mile. If that's what you're really into and you want to live in that continually, go for it. So I wanted to live in a more calm neighborhood. So Poblado started to be out for me right from the start, because to me, I love New York City, and I place Medellin in the place of New York City, and I would say Manhattan would be more like the Poblado. If you love Manhattan, you want to be right in the middle of everything, all the action, all the people. If you want to be in a more urban area where there are a lot, it's more international and not so cultural, then when you go to Manhattan, you get a taste of a more international flavor. Whereas when you go to the other boroughs surrounding Manhattan, you get more of a cultural flavor for the city, where more of the locals eat, where they, hang out, more a taste of local New York life. So here, if you want the Manhattan of Medellin, you go to Poblado. And to me, I would think maybe once a month or something, just like when I stay in New York City. My favorite part of New York City is called Astoria, Queens. It's very, very safe. It's very beautiful. It's very calm. The prices are lower than Manhattan. It's very ethnic. I mean, you got a lot of Italians, Greeks, Jewish people, other ethnicities pocketed in that area. And you get much more of a taste of the culture that makes up New York City as a whole. Astoria, Queens of Medellin. And then there's 2 other parts. One part is definitely part of Medellin called Envigado. And I would say Envigado would be more like maybe Brooklyn. And then there's another part to the south and it's called Sabaneta. But a lot of times when we're considering living here, that's another area that's recommended. That's probably the top 4 neighborhoods. We've got Laurales, Poblado, Envigado, and Sabaneta, which is just south of Envigado and not part, the city proper of Medellin. I would say it's more like Long Island. Now, I put together a simple chart comparing the 4 different neighborhoods in Medellin, just to give you a little idea, a little overview. And again, some of this is opinion of local people that live here and of foreigners, expats, and visitors to the city. It's a combination. Some of it, there's data for it, and some of it, it's just more of a feel that you have to be here, you have to know the place. Shout out to one of my best friends, Michael Aneo Dorado, who's from Medellin, because truly in the past, years ago when I thought about retiring, I had already investigated being an expat in Cuenca, Ecuador, and kind of ruled it out. I mean, it's a nice place, but I kind of ruled that out. So the way Michael played a big part in me coming here is when I was thinking about stretching my retirement money this year and retiring early at 62 years old and losing I guess about 30% of my Social Security income to retire early, I looked at a town called Merida in Mexico and said, Mike, I might become an expat in Mexico. And he said, Brian, you need to look at my city and my country. So when I started looking at it, I thought it really does meet everything that I would, I'd like to have. And I'm not going to go through why I chose Medellin. And I won't lie, I've been praying about this a long time, and God's had this coming a long time in my life. So he's had it planned, and I did go by his directions. But he put so much confidence in me about even the exact apartment and the exact area, so I didn't even have any problem buying the place, or at least making an offer and putting down a down payment before I got here. In fact, when I got on the ground, it surprised my realtor that I loved everything so much. She thought that I might back out and not want the apartment, but I loved it. I love the area. It's perfect here. I have heard some criticism about it's pretty noisy here in Laurales, but it's only if you're on a certain street, like the transversal streets that they connect, Poblado and Centro and other towns to the west. And there's a lot of traffic, a lot of truck traffic and stuff. But where I live, it's very peaceful, but you can just walk another 2 minutes and it gets a little bit loud. You probably want to live in either Laurales, El Poblado, Envigado, or Sabaneta. So here's a layout of the land in a color map. You'll notice that Laurales is to the east of the center of town. Then we have going southeast, Poblado, which is kind of in the east middle of everything. And following that to the south of Poblado, you'll run right into Envigado. And that's the end of Medellin proper, but we also add Sabaneta at the very south tip as part of the city, but it's really separate. And now we have a chart of the things I considered most important: price per square foot, safety for gringos, which I mean safety for people who are from the United States, because we are a main target in the area because they're looking to rob us, kidnap us, whatever, and take the money and whatever we have on us. Easy to walk because lots of these areas here are mountainous. We are in the Andes Mountains. Real estate strata, and that's interesting because from 1 to 6, it goes like this. It's socioeconomic. Number 1 is low class. Number 2 is upper low class. Number 3 is lower middle class. Number 4, middle class. 5, upper middle class. And number 6 strata is upper class. Another thing I considered was the flavor of Colombia, whether you want to have a more Colombian experience or not. And the last thing I considered was transportation. So you take all of those together, and I'll go over the points for each different area. You'll notice price per square foot. Poblado is the most expensive at $183 a square foot. Next is Laurales at $167 per square foot. Next, lowest per square foot, Envigado at $144. And finally, Sabaneta coming in the lowest price per square foot at $117. Next, as far as safety for gringos, the safest place is Laurales. The next safest place is Sabaneta. The next, which is less safe, is Envigado. And the least safe place in these four areas is El Poblado. Next, we're considering how easy it is to walk if somebody likes to walk every day, and if you're up there in age, or if you just don't want to have to walk up mountains all the time or run down them like the streets of San Francisco. The easiest place to walk is definitely Laurales, because Laurales is what they call plano, plain. It's flat, and then Poblado is a little harder, but it's still pretty easy. It's a little bit harder in Envigado, and the hardest place to walk is Sabaneta, because almost all of their population is living outside the main of the city in the hills and the mountains. Next, we're going to consider real estate strata. So Poblado is pretty much a 6 all across the board. Laurales is around 4 to 5, although I happen to live in a strata 6 in a very affluent neighborhood, but not much of Laurales is that affluent. And then coming in at 2 to 4 strata, we have Sabaneta, and then we have Envigado at 2 to 5 strata. Flavor of Colombia, how ethnic is it? With Poblado, not too Colombian, about 30% Colombian. With Envigado, we're talking the most flavor of Colombia at 95%. With Laurales, where I live, about 85%. And I can attest to that. People do not speak English in this section. And coming in at 75% Colombian flavor, Sabaneta. As far as transportation, it's pretty easy. Poblado has all the metro and everything right there at your fingertips. They have cable cars going up to the mountains, they have elevated trains, and they have a very good bus system. It's very new. I think it's about 20 years old. And then the other 3 suburbs, it's about equal, because you're going to need to take Ubers and taxis to get to the metro, or even to hook up with a bus sometimes. So definitely Poblado if you're into fingertip transportation, public transportation, but it's no problem if you take a taxi or an Uber, which are very cheap. A ride that would cost me in the United States about $30 will cost me about $3 for Uber in any section of the city. So there you have it. I considered all those factors, and of course, price of real estate. I wasn't willing to go too cheap. This is my retirement home, my dream home for the rest of my life, God willing. But Poblado was the most expensive, and I'd already ruled that out because of I wanted to be in a more ethnic, more Colombian neighborhood. And also, it's the most dangerous place for gringos, because that's where most of the gringos are. So that was already ruled out. So Laurales came in with a nice price budget, especially what I got. In an older building with the square footage I got an excellent deal. Number 2, safety for gringos. I just said that. Poblado was out, but Laurales is the safest place in the city for people from the United States. And the other factors were the strata I didn't want to be in 1, 2, or 3, but I thought if I'm in 4 or 5, and I thought I was in something like probably 5, but I just found out from my Airbnb host, who lives on the block next to where I'm buying the apartment tomorrow. She told me that we're in strata 6. This is a very wealthy section. You pay a little more in taxes, a little bit more in services, a little bit more even, I think, for your utilities and stuff, because this is a richer neighborhood and people here can afford it. It's kind of I think it's kind of a nice way to do things, because people that can't afford it, the government gives them a break, and then the people that can afford it, we pay a little more. I think that's a quite fair way of doing things. If you think so, put a comment. If you don't think so, put a comment. Let me know. I like to hear what you think. Doesn't mean I have all the right answers. Just give them my own opinions. And the other features, there was transportation, and I don't have to be on top of the train. If I do need to take the train into other sections, I can easily hop an Uber. And here, an Uber that would cost me in the United States about $30, for something like that, $3 to $4, maybe $5, $6. I know Cabify is a great app. If you want a good app, you get Cabify, and they say you can trust Uber and Cabify better than just calling a regular taxi, because sometimes just getting a taxi on the street, especially if you're a gringo, you're a target, might not have a good experience. So just go with something that's already in the app, somebody that's already been vetted. And the other 2 features I was looking at and considering were walkability. Definitely Envigado is the flattest and easiest to walk. And since I'm giving up my car and becoming mostly a pedestrian, I wanted to walk on a flat surface. I hope to have maybe a little dog and take my dog for walks. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to be climbing mountains every day. Another thing was the flavor of Colombia. Definitely much more ethnic area here in Laurales. Hardly anybody speaks English here. Everything's in Spanish. You won't see English written anywhere, hardly. Sometimes in the big stores, it's written in both. And in the big stores, there have been a few people that could speak broken English, but most people here speak Spanish. So, brush up on your Spanish before you come out to these neighborhoods like this, or stay in Poblado. There's enough English-speaking people there to help you out. A reason that even though Sabaneta is even a little bit more ethnic and a little bit more Colombian flavor than here in Laurales, one of the big things that I realized with Sabaneta, they have beautiful high-rises, beautiful new buildings. A lot of them are public projects, but they don't look like projects. They're labeled Strata 3, but they look more like 5. I was very interested until I realized that Sabaneta is a very small town. I believe I read it was like 5 or 6 square kilometers or miles, something like that. Definitely under 6 or 7 miles square. And that town grew so fast that the government never grew the infrastructure of the roadways and the transportation systems. So it's kind of a nightmare. It's like probably worse than Manhattan traffic, North Jersey traffic, and California traffic put together. It's just a nightmare, they tell me. And even though, maybe I wouldn't want to leave the city that much, even to go from one part of the city to the other, even in an Uber at rush hour, it's not going to help you. You're just going to be stuck in traffic. But I'll tell you, if you don't mind putting up with all that, it's beautiful. It looks like they have great street food. It's very safe because there are so many people packed. I saw one video where this expat was out there, and it was 10 at night, and there were a lot of people out still. And he was talking about safety in numbers, and that's the way it is. So those were a couple reasons why Sabaneta was not for me. But hey, if you can stand all the traffic and you don't care, you might want to consider Sabaneta. I think that about wraps up why I chose to live in Laurales. Now you might say, well, Brian, you didn't talk much about Envigado. Well, I looked at Envigado, and I was looking for more of an apartment type, a high-rise type deal for me. If you like regular apartments with 2 or 3 levels, or you like houses, then Envigado might be a nice choice. But I was definitely looking for something more in a high-rise. Here I have 6 stories in this building with a doorman. and I was looking for something more like that. So in Envigado, it doesn't appear too much in high-rise. It looked more like apartment communities, maybe 2 stories high, 3 stories high, condominium complexes, and then individual houses. I think that's about it. And I'll see you on another version of Italian in Medellin. For now, ciao.